It was a business of silence. In the grey, unassuming corners of Britain's Midlands, an empire rose not on the thunder of gunfire, but on the quiet tap of encrypted keyboards. There were no loud turf wars staining the streets with blood, no flashy rap videos boasting of wealth. There was only the quiet, relentless hum of a logistics network so sophisticated it rivaled a legitimate corporation. For over a year, this enterprise, built on a foundation of digital secrecy and meticulous planning, moved an astonishing £165 million worth of high-purity cocaine across the nation. It operated from the most mundane of places, a small terraced house in Derby where neighbors exchanged pleasantries over garden fences, the anonymous cabs of local taxi drivers navigating familiar city routes, and nondescript flats in Luton and London that blended seamlessly into the urban landscape. The men who ran it were not gangsters in the traditional, violent sense. They were supply chain managers, accountants, and dispatchers of an illicit empire. They saw themselves as invisible, protected by a digital shield of military-grade encryption and an understated professionalism that belied the poison they peddled. But their greatest strength, this unwavering faith in their own invisibility, would become their ultimate undoing. Every message, every ledger entry, every coded instruction they thought was ephemeral and secret was, in fact, laying a permanent breadcrumb trail for those who were patiently watching in the dark. This is the story of how a sophisticated drug network was built in the quiet suburbs of Britain and how the very system they trusted to keep them hidden brought the entire monolithic structure crashing down. What time is it where you are? And where are you watching us from? I look forward to your responses in the comments. And, of course, please subscribe to the channel. Paldip Pali Mongar did not look like a kingpin. To his neighbors on Willow Close in the peaceful Darley Abbey suburb of Derby, he was just another family man. The street was a portrait of English domesticity, with neatly trimmed lawns and the clinking sound of milk bottles on doorsteps in the early morning. No one would have suspected that behind the plain white door of his modest terraced house, a 45-year-old father of two was the silent, unassuming CEO of one of the most profitable drug operations in British history. Mongar was a man who eschewed the clichés of the criminal underworld. He had no craving for gold watches, no portfolio of foreign holiday homes, and no visible income that would raise an eyebrow. He was a ghost in his own community. But his ambition was not for flash. It was for volume and purity. He wasn't interested in the noisy, high-risk business of shifting ounces on street corners. He was an importer, a wholesaler. He dealt in bricks of high-purity cocaine, sourced directly from powerful international contacts in the sun-drenched metropolis of Dubai and shipped to the UK. As the undisputed head of the entire conspiracy, Mongar controlled his network with absolute command. His weapon of choice was not a gun, but an encrypted EncroChat phone. From the quiet of his living room, he was a puppet master, pulling invisible strings that stretched across the country and beyond. He orchestrated multi-kilo imports, managed nationwide distribution, and settled financial accounts, all through a device he believed made him a ghost. He built a ruthlessly efficient, corporate structure beneath him, with each member assigned a specific role, operating with the cold discipline of a legitimate company. There were no overt threats, no gratuitous violence. There was only a shared focus on the bottom line. From his quiet Derby home, he was the silent conductor of a criminal orchestra that, in just over a year, funneled a staggering £165 million in cocaine onto Britain's streets, all while he remained completely, terrifyingly unnoticed. Once the cocaine shipments, dispatched from Dubai, touched down on UK soil, the colossal task of moving them fell to one man, Jaswant Kajla. At 41, Kajla, based in Coventry, was the gang's master of logistics, a virtuoso of routes, routines, and absolute discipline. He didn't need weapons to maintain control. His power was far more subtle. It lay in his uncanny ability to make tons of Class A drugs and mountains of cash invisible in plain sight. Kajla designed and implemented the circulatory system of the entire empire. He devised a complex web of invisible delivery routes that crisscrossed the country. Pickups in Luton, drop-offs in Derby, cash returns funneled through a labyrinth of anonymous side streets, bustling petrol stations, and desolate late-night car park Severi movement was timed to the minute and meticulously rehearsed. From his home on Bluebird Drive, he was a grandmaster playing a nationwide game of chess, his couriers the pawns. He armed them not with weapons, but with well-practiced cover stories, drilling them to feign utter ignorance if ever stopped. This wasn't a haphazard drug-dealing operation. It was a slick, 24/7 supply network that police would later estimate was generating up to £400,000 in revenue per day. Couriers followed precise scripts. Distances were calculated to optimize fuel and minimize exposure, and risky shortcuts were strictly forbidden. If a handoff was compromised or a courier was delayed, Kajla didn't panic. With ice-cold composure, he would reroute assets, reassign tasks, and ensure the flow of product never stalled. He was the crucial bridge between the UK operation and the Dubai-based suppliers, handling the intricate travel arrangements, including flights and hotels, for senior gang members. He had transformed a criminal conspiracy into a professional logistics firm that never slept, its gears constantly turning, silently fueling the nation's drug habit. While Kajla managed the physical flow of the product, Manraj Johal, a quiet and unassuming 32-year-old from Luton, was tasked with tracking every single pound the empire earned. He was the network's chief financial officer, a man whose domain was not the streets, but the sterile glow of a laptop screen. He never touched the drugs. His commodity was data. Johal ran the books with the meticulous precision of a corporate accountant. In detailed Excel spreadsheets, he logged every sale, every expense, and every outstanding debt. There were no crude street codes, just plain, clean figures. When torrents of cash returned from buyers, they weren't just stuffed into bags. The money was processed. Bundles were carefully counted and tagged with unique token numbers, an ingenious system that linked each cash drop to a specific deal. This created a flawless, incorruptible accounting trail. If money went missing, they didn't need to resort to violence to find the culprit. They could simply consult the ledger. They knew exactly who owed what, down to the last penny. From his encrypted handset, Johal was in direct and regular contact with the suppliers in Dubai. He sent them clear, concise updates, reporting exact totals moved and profit margins hit. He built a relationship based not on fear, but on the kind of trust that comes from unwavering consistency and financial transparency. He was not alone in this monumental task. His 26-year-old cousin, Nimrat Bahia, assisted in counting and moving the vast sums of cash. It was Bahia who would provide investigators with one of their most stunning discoveries. When officers raided a nondescript London flat, they found him frozen mid-task, a deer in the headlights, surrounded by a sea of money. £530,000 in cash, neatly stacked, sorted, and tagged with the network's internal codes. Together, Johal and Bahia managed tens of millions of pounds, cocooned in the belief that their disciplined system and supposedly safe phones made them invincible. Every spreadsheet they created, however, was another nail in their own coffin. The Empire's engine was fueled by a select tier of trusted wholesale buyers, clients who had both the network to move serious weight and, crucially, the capital to pay for it up front. One of the most prolific of these was Michael Kareem, a 36-year-old from Nottingham. He wasn't just a local dealer, he was a regional hub, purchasing at least 9 kilograms of cocaine and feeding his own distribution network. But unlike the operation's architects, who cloaked themselves in anonymity, Kareem's success was loud. He was a walking advertisement for their profits and a beacon for law enforcement. Having benefited by over £1 million, He rented a fleet of 46 high-end cars, including BMWs, Mercedes, and Range Rovers. He spent £91,000 on 2 luxury apartments and took lavish trips to watch football across Europe and gamble in Las Vegas. The rest he poured into designer gear from Harvey Nichols and flannels. While buyers like Kareem represented the front end of the business, the daily grinding work of transport was handled by men like the Iqbal brothers, Basharat and Barasish. They were the lifeblood of the operation, their ordinary profession providing the perfect cover. They were licensed taxi drivers, locally known figures in Derby, the kind of men you'd flag down for a trip to the station without a second thought. But behind the meter, they were couriers for a national drug trafficking machine. Basharat, the older brother at 46, was a trusted and integral operator, transporting both multi-kilo shipments of drugs and vast quantities of cash. A later search of his address would uncover 3 kilograms of cocaine and 20,000 pounds in cash, a snapshot of his daily business. His younger brother, Benares, assisted in laundering the criminal proceeds, his legitimate cabbie routine, a flawless disguise. Their days were a study in duality. One moment, an innocent fare to the supermarket. The next, a high-stakes drop of criminal property worth more than most people earn in a decade. The ordinary yellow taxi sign on the roof of their cars was the ultimate camouflage, hiding an extraordinary secret within. The gang's entire operational security was built on a single, unshakable foundation: their supreme confidence in the EncroChat communication system. In the underworld, EncroChat was more than just a tool. It was a status symbol, a digital fortress that came with a promise of absolute impunity. They believed their messages were protected by a shield of encryption so powerful it was functionally unbreakable. This belief, this digital hubris, led to a breathtaking and ultimately fatal carelessness. Cocooned in this false sense of security, they spoke with startling freedom. They abandoned codes and aliases, discussing sensitive details openly. Drop-off addresses, cash totals, collection time sit was all laid bare. They shared personal photos, creating a digital scrapbook of their own conspiracy. In one message, a picture showed the interior of a house, sent to confirm a location. Police would later meticulously match the pattern on the curtains to a specific property in Derby. Another photo, sent casually, included the family dog relaxing in the corner of the frame. It was the same dog that greeted officers during a later raid. One member, with the diligence of a corporate accountant, meticulously tracked the gang's profits in a detailed spreadsheet, which he then sent directly through the very phone he believed was his impenetrable shield. They were documenting their own downfall in real time, creating a perfect evidence locker for the police without even knowing it. What they couldn't know was that their fortress had already been breached. Miles away, European law enforcement had achieved the impossible. They had successfully infiltrated the EncroChat network. A live, unfiltered stream of intelligence was being fed directly to a dedicated team at the East Midlands Special Operations Unit, EMSO. In their secure office, investigators watched in astonishment as the inner workings of the empire unfolded on their screens. They had a live view into the heart of the conspiracy. For weeks, the gang continued to operate, their confidence absolute, oblivious to the fact that their every word, every plan, and every boast was sealing their fate. When the police finally made their move in the spring of 2020, it was not with a chaotic flurry of raids, but with the cold, calculated precision of a surgical strike. The map of the entire conspiracy was already drawn, every player's position known. Surveillance teams watched as a courier calmly left a residential address in Derby, a holdall slung over his shoulder. Inside was his cargo, 7 kilograms of high-purity cocaine. He walked calmly to his car, with no sense of urgency. He was stopped quietly on a suburban side road. There was no chase, no confrontation. The police weren't chasing a suspect, they were collecting an asset. This single, clean arrest was confirmation of everything investigators had been reading for weeks. The scale was real. From that point, the House of Cards collapsed. Warrants were executed simultaneously across the country, from Derby to Luton, Coventry to Nottingham. In London, officers raided a flat and walked into a scene of pure, undisturbed criminality. Nimrat Bahia sat amidst a staggering £530,000 in cash, bundled and tagged according to the network's own meticulous accounting codes. Other properties yielded kilograms of cocaine, while some held nothing but stacks upon stacks of cash, neatly arranged in £40,000 bundles. The subsequent trials at Derby Crown Court laid bare the astonishing scale of what prosecutor Gareth Wheatman called an industrial operation. He revealed that in a single 46-day period, the gang had moved over £18.6 million in cash alone. Judge Jonathan Bennett, in his sentencing remarks, was clear. This was no chaotic street crew, but a structured criminal enterprise, and the sentences would reflect that. In January 2022, the hammer fell. Paldip Mangar, the silent architect, was sentenced to 18 years and 3 months. Jaswant Kajla, the logistics chief who kept the machine moving, was jailed for 15 years and 3 months. The meticulous accountant, Manraj Yohal, received 15 years and 8 months for his role. In total, 18 members of the organization were convicted, receiving combined sentences of 167 years in prison. The silent empire, once deemed untouchable by its creators, had been completely and utterly dismantled, its downfall meticulously documented and archived by the very hands that had built it.